Hi, and welcome. And thank you to my friend Kathleen Whalen of Whalen Financial Group in LaSalle for sponsoring Tom's Take. Please stop in and see her team this week. They're glad to help you out. This week I'm talking to you from home. I go all over the place. I thought for once I'd just stay at home, specifically the dining room, and do it from here today. There's something authentic about that. But there's also a certain inauthenticity in striving to be authentic, don't you think? Most politicians come to mind when we talk about that, right? So it can be a bit bewildering at first to spend some time with someone who truly knows who she is, embraces it, and then builds her life around it. Now, I didn't know Dani Piland'a well, still don't. And by the way, I learned her name is pronounced Piland and not Piland, so on behalf of the newsroom, I apologize for pronouncing your name incorrectly, Dani. But until recently, my only other experience with her had been when she ran against Adam Kinzinger in his last general election for Congress. So that was my frame of mind when I showed up at a community meeting she organized more than 2 years later, now a few months ago. And the purpose of that was for community members to discuss the recent Karis chemical disaster. And I was skeptical, right? I used to work in politics. There's always an angle. There's always an ulterior motive. There's always a reason that's going to be unveiled and revealed in due time. But Dani struck me in that meeting as unconcerned about labels, philosophies, dogma. She was just hurting because people in her town were hurting after the Karis incident. So later, more recently now, when she announced that she was launching a nonprofit organization called the City of LaSalle Foundation, after seeing the Karis meeting that she hosted, I wasn't as skeptical anymore. I wanted to know more. The mission of Dani's foundation is to support community and economic development, augmenting the hard work already being done by municipal departments of economic development, like here in LaSalle. And vice versa, they can help each other. The idea is to approach developing a community from multiple perspectives with the understanding that businesses looking to relocate and invest in communities are looking for communities that are open, welcoming, and alive with social, recreational, and cultural opportunities. If there's a commercial space in LaSalle that really reflects Dani's sense of who she is and what she's all about, it's the bar that she owns. It's called Sanctuary, and it's in downtown LaSalle. It's a place where ideas take root and grow. What better spot really than there to learn more about the City of LaSalle Foundation and get to know the person behind it. I asked Dani how she sees working her foundation with the city's economic development team.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and it's one that people have been asking me a lot. And I think it's a particularly relevant question because of my background in politics, which is so close to the operation of government. Frankly, it's part of the reason I chose a nonprofit route to do this, and it's because the bureaucracy of government can really hamstring an administration, right? Our economic development team in the City of LaSalle, our municipal administration broadly, has a very specific set of things that they are supposed to do and a specific set of things that they can do. The foundation has a little bit more flexibility. So I hope that we collaborate and cooperate a lot. Like I've said a handful of times, we have so many people, so many organizations that are dedicated to economic and business development explicitly that I feel really confident leaving the bulk of that work in their extraordinarily capable hands. And taking on some of these other sort of, tangential projects, the ancillary work of community development with the foundation. So I'm hopeful that we work really, really closely together and that our work dovetails in a way that feels organic and comes easily to everyone. I suspect it will. One of the mistakes that we as activists can sometimes make, and as organizers too, and something that I certainly have been guilty of, is looking at this big picture and really thinking about the big picture. But the way we actually start to affect change is by focusing in on some of those finer points, some of those really concrete, pragmatic details. So addressing the lack of affordable, reliable, certified childcare in the City of LaSalle is a really concrete way that we can ensure we're supporting working families. And you think about the impact that that has on kids, think about the impact that that has on the ability of parents to hold down jobs, to keep jobs. Think about the impact that that has on employers when you're talking about employee retention. When you are looking at business development broadly and companies are looking at LaSalle as a potential location for a branch or an outpost of some sort, having this one resource starts to have an impact on all of those things. And that's how community development works, right? You have to stumble through all of it at once. Yeah. You've got to just throw a whole bunch of things at the wall and really work super hard to make sure that a bunch of them stick all at once. And that's how we're going to create the kind of sustainable generational change that I am absolutely positive is possible in this community.
Now, her press release announcing the launch of the foundation, including a description of a big event that the organization is planning for later this year.
It's called Quiet Fest.
What is that about?
So this is the coolest concept. So it is a roving arts and music festival. There are a handful of sort of models for this. There's a big one in the Quad Cities called Alternating Currents. But essentially what we're doing is we have venues, more than 20 of them, all across the city of LaSalle. And those venues are going to be hosts for performance art, tattoo artists, makeup artists. We've got music of all sorts. There's a big comedy piece, filmmakers coming to town, people from a couple of different states even. And over the course of a weekend, all of those performances are going to take place. We're going to have visual arts set up, so things like paintings and photographs in particular locations. We're going to have a huge itinerary.
So LaSalle sort of becomes the stage, all of LaSalle.
Yes, it's so cool. It's so exciting to have that pool of local talent, and an event like this gives us an opportunity to showcase that talent, bring in new talent, bring in lots of people who maybe maybe aren't as familiar with particular locations or venues, and really start getting them exposure to new places and new things. When I was growing up, I went to LP and I was a smart kid, and I grew up kind of with this narrative that if you're smart and you have potential, that you should take it somewhere else. And what a terrible mistake.
You're checking out my chat with Dani Piland'a, the founder and executive director of the City of LaSalle Foundation. More to come about Quiet Fest in the future. Now, if you're listening to this online or on the air at 103.9 WLPO, you're missing the full picture. Get it? You can see the whole story in video form at Starved Rock Media's YouTube channel. We talked at her business, a bar called Sanctuary, and she was all business when she said she started the foundation for the reasons she stated. And while she didn't lock the door on a future in politics, she did shut that door pretty hard.
I don't want anybody who hears this messaging to be mistaking my, current trajectory as a political one. It's really not. And the bar either. This bar isn't. It's not a Democratic bar. It's not a Republican. You may know that I resigned kind of dramatically from the Democratic Party last summer. I just really don't see that partisan politics is a particularly effective mechanism for affecting change, particularly in communities like this one. Most people are independents. Most people here are really voting for causes or individual people that they feel like they can trust. I'm really leaning on coalition building, that community being so important to me, the trust that is built organically out of connecting with individual people. And I certainly hope that people trust that I'm doing this work because it's really important to me. Can you imagine being hamstrung by the legislature? That sounds like the opposite of what I really want to be doing, which is effecting change, empowering the people in this community, and creating this, like I said, sustainable generational growth.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up, but I have one last question. What do you need?
Yeah, so we need volunteers for sure, and we need help with fundraising. So donations are obviously, that's the foundation of a foundation. That's how we do the things that we're trying to accomplish. Quiet Fest is going to be our first big fundraiser. I think we're going to have a couple of small ones over the summer. People can go to our Facebook page. It's at City of LaSalle Foundation. Super easy to find. The email address is cityoflasallefoundation@gmail.com. Certainly people who stop in the bar can, find me or my entire staff. I've been working in nonprofits for a really long time, so I feel confident that we'll achieve our financial goals. But the more people involved, the better off we're going to be.
Now, Dani Piland'a and I probably, when it comes down to it, wouldn't agree on a lot of political policy, philosophy, dogma. But I know true authenticity when I'm around it. And I have a great deal of respect for her commitment to her values and the low-key righteousness of her mission. So I'm going to return to Sanctuary off the clock, and here's why. In what maybe surprised me more than it should have, this middle-aged, white, male, moderate Republican was made to feel welcome by good people who themselves may not be always welcome in places where I'm made to feel at home. You don't have to look hard for kindness. You can find it at 125 Hennepin in LaSalle, in a place called Sanctuary. That's it for Tom's Take for this week. Talk to you in the morning.